You know, we all have high points in our walk with God. When I was filled with the Spirit in '76, that was a high point for me. When God taught me the importance of seeking Him for who He is and not for what He can do for me, that was a life-changing thing for me. Don't ever just try to use God to get everything you want. You come to Him because He is. And He's awesome. You can't live without Him. And just one little tiny moment in His presence is worth more than 1,000 years somewhere else. And another high point in my walk with Him was when He taught me the importance of the inner life. You see, I think that a lot of people go their whole Christian life and they're only concerned with how they look. See, that was how the religious Pharisees were. And boy, Jesus really had some tough things to say to those Pharisees. He said, you put on a good show, you tithe, you attend all the right meetings, you observe all the religious holidays, but inside you're full of wickedness and evil thoughts and judgments, and you think you're better than other people. Come on now. We have to be so careful of our thinking. The devil's always trying to get us to criticize and judge and find fault. And even though it doesn't always come out of our mouth, how often do we look at somebody doing something and in our pride think, well, I would never do that. And see, we need to learn to recognize those things, because what Satan's doing is he's trying to build a stronghold of cold love in our heart, where we have a hardness in our heart toward other people. The Word of God teaches us that we're to be merciful and long-suffering and gentle, and that we're to work to bring restoration to people, and that we should not think more highly of ourselves than we ought to, but we should think about ourselves according to the grace gifts that's on our life. You know, if somebody else in your family or a friend of yours is real slow and it takes them a long, long time to do everything, and you're one of these real quick people, fast, it's so easy to get irritated. Like, oh, I can't believe you are so slow. Well, you know what? If God wouldn't have given you a grace gift to comprehend things quicker, you'd be slow too. So instead of judging somebody else, we need to thank God for the gift on our life, and we need to look for the gift in their life, because you may be able to do something they can't do, but if you look long enough, you'll find there's something they can do that you can't do. And usually people that are a little slower do it a little better than the people that do it fast. We get it done and get it over with, but sometimes we miss the details. Hallelujah. Well, let's talk about some of the various conditions that our mind can be in and try to get around to what's normal and how we think Jesus would have been thinking. Because, you know, the Bible does say in 1 Corinthians 2:16 that we have the mind of Christ. Say, I have the mind of Christ. The Amplified says we do hold the thoughts, feelings, and intents of His heart. So in my mind of the Spirit, I have the ability to think like Jesus would think in every situation. But one of the things that we must do, and boy, our society is fighting against us. The devil is using our society to fight against us. We need to slow down. And we need to slow down so we can discern things, so we can learn to think in the Spirit, and we can take a minute to check with our heart and ask ourselves, is this really what Jesus would do? And no matter how we feel about it, we need to choose to line our thoughts, our words, and our behavior up with the Word of God. Can I tell you something? What I just described to you right there is what it means to die to self. Paul said, I die daily. He said, it's no longer I that liveth, but Christ that liveth in me. And the life that I now live, I live by the faith of the Son of God. Jesus said, any man that's going to follow me must take up his cross and do so. He must forget himself, lose sight of himself and all of his own interests, and follow me. That's what spiritual maturity is. That's what it means to die to self. And let me tell you something, if you really want to live, then you got to die. See, Jesus died and had a resurrection. Well, we're not talking about a physical dying and a spiritual resurrection. We're talking about right here in this earth, dying to self and selfishness and the mind of the flesh and all the junky stuff the flesh wants to do so you can have the real life that Jesus died to give you. Hating people is not a real life. Being jealous is not a real life. Being critical is not a real life because you're full of poison. We can go to church and we can jump around with everybody else and we can know how to quote all the right scriptures at the right time. But if we are full of junk inside, then we have a poisoned life. And in a moment when we least expect it, that miserable thing on the inside of us will creep its way out and show itself when we would rather it would stay hidden. Let's go back. Use your holy imagination. Dave's hurt my feelings. Now this is an imagination. Poor Dave, he gets picked on so bad. Let's say Dave's hurt my feelings. Well, I just can't believe. I just can't believe he didn't even bother to go and get me there my birthday. I just can't believe. I can't believe he forgot this our anniversary. I just can't believe that he doesn't realize that I've been working so hard and I need him to do something. I just can't. Well, I can think about that and think about that and think about that. And the more I think about that, the more miserable I'm going to get. The more sour I'm going to get. The more prune-faced I'm going to get. But if I'll just take a minute and say, how would Jesus handle this situation? Well, you know, we know the answer. How many of you know you already know the answer? See, we're not as dumb as we like to pretend like we are. And you know what we have? We have selective hearing. We hear what we want to hear from God, and then what we don't want to hear from God, we act like we can't hear from God. You got to get rid of selective hearing and start hearing everything that God has to say. Well, just stop. Okay, Lord, I'm miserable. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling discouraged. What's wrong? Oh, it's my thoughts. Let's don't be like the Israelites who murmured and grumbled and complained so long that the Lord finally sent fiery burning serpents into the camp and they bit the people and the people died. 23,000 of them fell dead in one day because of their stupid attitude. Now they get a revelation. Let's don't be the kind of people that we've got to lose our job and lose our families and lose our friends and lose our health before we wake up and say, oh, I've sinned.